Jessica walked leisurely through the supermarket pushing her shopping cart, which was already half full of convenience foods and fresh fruit. She was a housewife who lived with her husband and daughter in a small town where there were few prospects for development, and her husband, Eric, was a construction worker who often had to travel to other cities to earn money in order to make a decent living for his family. Jessica's main occupation was to keep the house clean and tidy, and she also managed a small vegetable garden near the house. One day, during another trip to the supermarket, Jessica was so lost in thought about her boring life that she didn't notice how she bumped her shopping cart into a young man. "I'm sorry, I didn't see you," Jessica immediately started apologizing. "It's okay, it's my own fault." He laughed and hurriedly put the phone away. "My name is Zach," he introduced himself and extended his hand to Jessica, who shook his hand back. "You don't have to worry, I should have watched my own back, but I still want to make it up to you. Can I buy you a cup of coffee?" Jessica and Zach chatted for a while at the cozy cafe across the street. Before she knew it, an hour and a half had passed and she had to pick up her daughter from school. "Okay Zach, I'd love to see you again, but I have to go today. Let's meet tomorrow, same time, same place. It's a deal. The next time we see each other certainly won't be the last." The innocent conversation over coffee soon developed into a deeper relationship. Zach was very caring and empathetic. Jessica loved feeling wanted and loved she didn't get as much attention from her husband as she would have liked, and she and Zach began to date. Jessica hid their affair. She realized she had betrayed her husband who had taken care of her for years, betrayed her daughter who she thought had guessed her mother's double life. "He said he couldn't get a hold of you, he couldn't see you tonight. What did he mean by that?" The daughter looked at her mother reproachfully. "Yes." Jessica was a little confused at first. She sat down on her mother's couch and hugged her. "Yes, honey, I miss him too." Jessica stroked her daughter. She had been thinking all night about recent events lately. She'd been thinking about Eric and her daughter. She wanted to continue her relationship with Zach, but she knew that sooner or later her secret would be revealed and the consequences could be very bad. What could he possibly have to offer her? Other than affection and tender words, he himself was still young and not ready to start and maintain a family. On the eve of her husband's arrival, Jessica decided to talk to her lover. She decided to end their relationship. "After all, listen Zach, I'm really happy with you," she started to say. "Yeah, I've been listening to you." He put his arm around her shoulders and kissed her on the corner of her mouth. "And we had to break up." Jessica let out a relieved breathing, a sigh of relief. It seemed like the hardest part was over. "But why are we so good together? I love you so much and I don't want to lose you." He tried to convince his lover not to jump to conclusions, hoping that she would change her mind and let our relationship continue. "Yes, I'm good with you too." She looked guiltily into his eyes. "But this was a mistake. I can't leave my family. Please understand me." Zach started kissing her, telling her to think about it. "Honey, think about it. Everything is going so well." "No." Jessica pushed away and pulled away from his embrace. "I can't. We have to." The next day, Eric arrived as promised, and he rushed from the threshold to embrace the woman he loved, his wife and daughter, who jumped into his arms as well. The daughter wrinkled her nose. "Don't be away from us for so long again. Come on, honey. I missed you myself. You have grown up." "Eric, I am so happy to see you back again," Jessica said, realizing how much she needed him. The three of them spent half a day together, Eric telling them how he worked and what had happened to him and his team. Lana listened intently, interrupting him from time to time with rhetorical questions. "Did you know that my mom decided to do yoga?" "Really? You never told me about it." "There's nothing to tell." She was embarrassed. "It was just a couple of classes to make me sound better. But it's over now. I'm yours now." "Oh, I think the chicken's ready." Jessica was glad to change the subject when she heard a corresponding beeping sound from the kitchen stove. After a long business trip, Eric finally got a chance to come home for a weekend and the couple continued to live together. Jessica tried not to think about Zach and her brief fling with him. Although she sometimes dreamed of a romantic encounter with him, she chalked it up to memories of a secret past. One day, she and her husband were shopping at the grocery store when Jessica saw an acquaintance of hers at the other end of the aisle. But Jessica hugged tighter under Eric's arm, which made Zach realize that they shouldn't approach each other. Zach bowed his head sadly. He was disappointed, but despite his desire to get closer to the love of his life, he went the other way, and now everything seemed to be going their way, and Jessica focused her attention on her husband and her daughter. She was a considerate wife and mother, and she wanted everything to be like it used to be. But one day she ran into Zach again on the street as she was parking her car and Zach approached her. But Zach suddenly stopped her, grabbed her by the shoulders and kissed her fiercely, and Jessica couldn't help but respond to him, blurring her eyes in raging emotion. But she knew it was wrong to renew her relationship with Zach. She was torn between her feelings and her duty to her husband and daughter. Suppressing her inner struggle, Jessica finally broke free from Zach's embrace and quickly left him, starting to write to her occasionally, but she ignored his messages. Jessica wanted to forget everything until a few weeks later when she couldn't take it anymore and started to see Zach again in secret. Only now they saw each other much less often. It was another weekend. Eric was with his family after a business trip. On those evenings Jessica would cook herself and make special dishes to entertain her family. They had dinner as usual. Jessie chewed on a piece of meat in her dish as she said, "This has never tasted so good, thank you. I know your tastes, and I like to spoil you once in a while." "Everything is going well. We have completed some big projects and are preparing some new ones," Eric replied. "Where are you going back to work?" Jessica asked. "I don't know yet. I'll be at home for a while. I'm waiting for new orders. In the meantime, why don't we all go on a picnic or something? What do you think?" She looked at her husband and daughter and realized that she had hidden her cheating from them, but she decided not to think about it right now and try to enjoy the family vacation. Eric scanned the screen and read her correspondence with Zach. He was shocked and disappointed in his wife. He couldn't understand how she could have cheated on him after so many years together. Eric had discovered her terrible secret. Eric heard a rustling sound and turned his head toward the door. What was wrong with Jessie? He continued to hold the phone in his hand. "Eric, I can explain. It's not what you think." Her voice was visibly trembling and she felt her legs shaking. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it was going to jump out of her chest. She had been able to hear Eric's voice as a hazy echo. She tried to grab a hand onto the door frame to keep up with him, but her hand slipped. Jessica fell to the floor with a thud. When she opened her eyes she found herself lying on the couch. Sitting next to her was Lana. Seeing that her mom was awake she moved a little closer to her. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "What happened?" Jessica wasn't fully awake yet. "You fell, you fainted." Mom Lana took her hand and squeezed it in hers. "Dad said he saw some messages on your phone and decided to check it out. He found out that you were dating Zach." Lana was old enough to know what was going on, and of course she noticed her mom hadn't gone to her friend's house to have tea. Lana was old enough to know what was going on, and of course she noticed that her mom hadn't gone to her friend's house for tea. The breakup of her family had been hard on her. Jessica closed her eyes and tried to remember what had happened. She looked around the room and saw no sign of her husband. She felt a strong surge of excitement again. "He'll be back in a minute. Get some rest." Lana was about to leave, but she slowed down and looked back at her mom. "Mom, you're getting a divorce, aren't you?" A look of disappointment, resentment and sadness came into her eyes. "I don't know," she answered honestly, but deep down she hoped that things weren't as sad as she thought they were at the moment. But it was too late to change anything. Jessica had spent the night alone thinking about her daughter, locking herself in her room. She resented her mother. She needed time to let the pain subside a little. Eric came home late that night. He was drunk, but Jessica didn't say anything against it. He walked silently past his wife and sat down in a chair across from her. Eric glanced at her from under his forehead, then wiped his face with his hand, and leaned back in his chair and continued to stare at the woman who had betrayed him. Jessica's lips began to quiver. She tried to say something, but a lump was stuck in her throat and all she could do was make a whimpering sound with her trembling hand. "I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry." Her sobs filled the room. "You know what, Jessie?" Eric stood up from his chair and walked over to the bar and pulled out a pitcher of whiskey, taking it in his hand and giving himself a pour. A glass. But before he could drink, he turned and took the drink back to his seat and sat down on the soft cushions. "I know you cheated on me," he continued, warming the drink in his hand. "I know about you and Zach. The first time you cheated on me with him." Jessica was shocked to hear that. It was all she could say. "Yes, Jessica, I know. Lana told me she wasn't stupid. She could understand. And then I talked to Zach, and I'm so glad that you came to your senses and decided to break it off with me. I've even forgiven you. I realized that it was because you were so lonely, and I was ready to forget everything." Eric took the first sip from his glass and waited for the flavor to spread in his mouth and then continued, "But you're not being modest. You not only betrayed me, you betrayed your daughter." Jessica looked at him with tears in her eyes and didn't know what to say. "I've been thinking about this for a long time, Jessica. I want to leave everything. I want to leave you. But I can't leave my daughter. You know how much I love her, and that's why I've decided to not to get divorced for a while, at least until she goes to college." but my trust in you, Jessica, is lost forever, and I will never forgive you for betraying me. You will never feel my tenderness and care again. I will live in my own room, and if you start another love relationship, I will not be as kind as I am now.